From the producers of Superman, Alexander Salkind presents Supergirl.
Like Superman.
He's my cousin.
Whoa.
Supergirl on a secret mission to save her world.
You've had your fun, Selena. The game is finished.
Starring Faye Dunaway, Peter O'Toole, and Helen Slater as Supergirl.
Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 1984 comic book film, Supergirl. Now, Supergirl is, in my opinion, a legitimately underrated comic book film. And it doesn't get enough credit for trying to break some new ground when it comes to the genre. When it comes to a female lead in a comic book film with a pretty sizable budget. Just because the film didn't wind up being a box office hit and didn't get tons of rave reviews from critics, that doesn't mean that it's not influential. And I feel films like Wonder Woman, for instance, or even Captain Marvel got more rub and to this day continue to get more respect and admiration and appreciation for breaking new ground than Supergirl does. And I think that's really a shame, and it's really frustrating to see this film get discredited in that fashion, because it really is arguably probably the first attempt to try to make a female superhero fly on the big screen. And the film, to me, is not that bad. It's not even a bad film. It's one of those movies that I legitimately enjoy. Like, each time I watch this film, the more I appreciate it, the more I warm up to the movie. I love the fact that Supergirl is unique when it comes to the comic book genre. Not just because of the fact that it was breaking new ground with a female superhero, but also because of the fact that it's a interesting and intriguing mix of comic book heroism and fantasy elements. In a lot of ways, it reminds you of something like Krull, which also came out in the 80s. And it's another film that I also really enjoy. And I like the fact that you have a superhero film where the superhero is fighting a fantasy villain, dealing with magic and other kinds of otherworldly dimensional beings. It's something different from the norm when it comes to this genre, because a lot of the time they're just facing somebody who's just another superhuman, or they're facing somebody from their rogues gallery, and it's understandable why it's set up that way for a lot of these other films. But it's nice when you see a film come along like Supergirl that tries to do something different in more than one way. Now, Supergirl is directed by Jeannot Szwarc, and I've always felt that Jeannot Szwarc was a solid, undervalued director. He's not a guy who's going to blow you away with his direction, but for the most part, he's going to be solid, and he's going to deliver a nice product. He's going to handle the film well, and I felt he did that with Jaws 2. I felt he did that with his film Bug. I felt he's done that quite often in his career, and I think Supergirl is no exception to that. When the film needed to be spectacular and have some really amazing visuals, the film really did deliver on that front, in large part due to Jeannot's solid hand as a director. The film didn't have a lot of tonal dissonance. There weren't a lot of moments where the film felt like it was tonally different in terms of the direction. It really maintained a consistent tone throughout, and it felt like there were sequences that were intended to be more comedic, that were shot in a way that was effective, and didn't seem like it was something that he wasn't comfortable with. And then on top of that, when it comes to the scenes that are supposed to be more dramatic, he held his own well. And also during the bits of action and spectacle that were on display in the film. I think Jeannot Szwarc did a really solid job with Supergirl. It's not a spectacular job, but it's a solid job nonetheless. And for a film like this, you easily could have had a lesser director come into the fray and make it considerably worse and make the movie appear to be something that's low rent or bad or as cheesy as a lot of critics continue to make the film out to be. I think the direction in this, among a lot of other things, really lends a lot of credibility to the film. Now, the screenplay by David Odell is one of those instances where the film doesn't really soar as high as it could. One of the main problems I have with this film, one of the few issues that I have with the movie that I legitimately, for the most part, really enjoy, even as it is the fact that Supergirl doesn't really do a whole lot here. She doesn't really have a lot of action sequences. There aren't that many slam bang action moments for Supergirl. There's a whole scene where she's fighting an invisible force and it just comes across as There's a scene near the end where she's fighting the same force, but now it's in physical form. And it's another thing that's a little bit of a letdown because she doesn't really do a whole lot in that. And it's just one of those things where, other than her stopping it's not a bulldozer, but it's a piece of construction equipment. So she stops this piece of construction equipment from wreaking havoc in the middle of a small town and saves this one guy. But other than that, you really don't have a lot for her to do. There's not a lot that she does. And I think that's more of a failing that ultimately falls at the screenwriter's feet. Give her more to do. Make her a formidable match, or make her somewhat close to the same level as Superman. Why have her be in her own film and have her not really do a whole lot in terms of action? It also felt like a waste of Derek Medding's dynamic and just absolutely amazing visual effects work. I mean, this movie has some absolutely stupendous, jaw-dropping flying sequences, and it feels like a waste because there's never a moment where she's using those powers in a memorable, exciting fashion, in a big, grand action set piece. I mean, you're doing all this nice work, you're laying the groundwork for a female superhero, but you're not providing her with moments on screen that makes her seem like she really is on the same playing field as the other supermen on the big screen. It just felt like a really missed opportunity, like a massive mistake on the screenwriter's part not to have her do more when it comes to the action. And I also have to admit there are some other elements of the script that really don't work that great. For instance, the romance between Supergirl and this other guy, Ethan, played by Hart Bochner. I never really cared for that. I didn't think they had any chemistry. It came across as a very awkward and weird relationship. It never really felt like it was something that was genuine. It was tacked on and tacky. And I can see why some people aren't big on the humor, especially when it comes to the villainous Selena and her whole thing, but I didn't mind it. That's one thing I actually also felt was a positive with this script. I actually did like a majority of the wit, and I felt the screenwriter gave a lot for Faye Dunaway to really uh, smolder and just chew the scenery with. I felt that the screenwriter did a good job giving her a lot of things that she could sink her teeth into. And I don't mind the whole setup of Argo City and all of that in the beginning. And yeah, the MacGuffin, the Megahedron is just one of those things where it seems like it can do anything. But I was okay with it. It didn't bother me that much. And one thing that I really thought was also noteworthy about this script is how it handles the Phantom Zone. It's a very different take on the Phantom Zone. So you still see the prison, which is a square, this glass like square, and this time around, though, you actually see what's going on inside of it. And I like the sequences in the Phantom Zone. I like the fact that it shows that the Phantom Zone is an actual place and it's not just some prison that's made out of some unique and alien material that is shaped like a rectangle, like there's or a square. Like there's nothing other than that you see in the other Superman films at this point. So it's really nice to see the actual Phantom Zone. And I really liked the scenes where Supergirl finds a way with help from her mentor to escape from the Phantom Zone. I thought that was a really nice, inspired choice. I also like the mix of magic and mystery and mystique that's also thrown in there with Selena and her witch character. So overall, there are a lot of things about this script that are effective, that really do work. There was even some more things that I want to mention. I really liked uh, the connection between Linda Lee, Supergirl's alter ego, and Lucy Lane. I thought the way that things were handled with those two was great. You really bought that they became fast friends, and I really liked the sequences with them. And it was fun to also see Jimmy Olsen brought into the picture here. And there was another really nice, heartfelt sequence as well, where you get to see Christopher Reeve Superman, a picture of his Superman on the wall, and you get to see Supergirl's admiration and respect for him. And I think initially the intent was to actually have Christopher Reeve in a cameo, but it just didn't work out. And I think it was actually the better choice to just have the picture, because if he did show up in a cameo, I don't know. I think that might have really hurt Helen Slater, because there would have been some moments where she would have gotten legitimately upstaged by Christopher Reeve. And there would be people who would be disappointed because they'd be like, well, Superman's in the movie, but he doesn't do much. Because the original intent was to have him be one of the people who was captured by Selena, and Supergirl had to save him. And I think that could have backfired really quickly, because I think there would have been a lot of people who would have been like, wait, what, Superman can't take care of this low rent villain himself? Like, what is this? Why does he need Supergirl's help? Oh, why should I care about Supergirl? Like, I want more of Superman. Like, I could see why they didn't ultimately go that route. But yeah, despite some issues here and there with the script, mainly the fact that Supergirl doesn't really do a lot on the screen in terms of the action, I think it's a decent script. I don't think it's anywhere near as bad as a lot of people are saying that it is. I don't have a problem with the scene where Supergirl first arrives on Earth and is playful and is flying around and testing her powers, and I don't mind that. I know a lot of people have an issue with it because they're, what are you doing? You have a limited amount of time to find the Megahedron and you're just messing around. Like, I don't have a problem with that scene because it's so gracefully done in terms of the way that it's shot and the way that the effects are, that it just becomes something that I find pretty awesome to watch, just to see these technicians at work. And Helen Slater also sells that really well. This is the first time she's been on Earth. She has been fantasizing about being on Earth and experiencing all the things that come with being on Earth, and especially Earth's environment, for her whole life. So to expect her to not be excited, or for her to not be playful with this first time experience, is honestly pretty lame, if you ask me. You're expecting her to just be stern and serious about it. Like, she's just a kid. She's not fully grown up in terms of her mindset or even her knowledge. Like, it's even established that she's like, I think she's like 17, 18, 19 years old, maybe. I mean, Helen Slater, when she acted in this film, she wasn't even 20 years old. So I don't have a problem with it. I've never had an issue with the way the film opens up, or with her doing the whole thing with her being Linda Lee and doing all of that. Because, to be honest, if you didn't have that, the film would be more boring to me. It would be more dull because of the fact that there isn't as much intrigue. Oh, she's just going to keep trying to find the Megahedron. After a while, that would get old. So I'm fine with the fact that they threw in some things with her character that put her in a different place, that put her in a different setting, and while still having her try to find the Megahedron. Now, the film features a pretty nice cast as well. I mean, Helen Slater, I thought she did a really good job playing Supergirl in this. She deserves a lot more praise, if you ask me. Really, because of the fact that this is her first film. This was her first feature film. She had done some stuff on television, but this was her first big role. And I thought she soared. She looked the part in the costume as Supergirl. There were sequences with her acting where maybe some of the line deliveries were a little stilted, but it's something that you could give her a pass for, considering that she was so inexperienced at the time. But there are other scenes, like the sequence where she's showing her determination and talking about how she is not going to give up while she's trapped in the Phantom Zone, that are really great for a young actress. So I've always felt that Helen Slater did a great job as Supergirl, and I still feel that way. I think this is one of her best performances. And it's even more impressive considering that it's arguably her first. Faye Dunaway, I know some people don't like her in this. I loved her in this film. Yeah, she's hamming it up, but with this kind of role, that's what you should be doing. I mean, Gene Hackman was hamming it up as Lex Luthor, so what's the problem here? Faye Dunaway was an absolute joy. I loved her performance in this. She was a absolute stone cold witch, but that's the whole point. And you could tell that she was having some legit fun with the role. Peter O'Toole Zoltar, I mean, the guy was drunk off his ass, and you could tell, but he still was a good enough actor that he still delivered a legitimately good performance, despite the fact that he was sauced out of his mind. Hart Bochner, miscast. I didn't buy him in this role. And on top of that, he had no chemistry with Helen Slater. It was just a really bad performance, and easily one of the weakest things when it comes to the cast and to the overall film. I never really liked this character, Ethan. I didn't give a shit about Ethan. I didn't care whether or not Selena kept him trapped in a love spell, or he fell in love with Supergirl and they flew away to the Argo City and lived happily ever after. I did not give a shit. I didn't care. Mia Farrow, that was a nice bit of casting to have her play Kara's mother. Brenda Vacarro, I enjoyed her quite a bit too as Bianca, the best friend, the sidekick to Faye Dunaway's Selena. I thought they had some nice chemistry, some fun back and forth with one another. It reminded me in a lot of ways of the same back and forth that Gene Hackman had with Ned Beatty. Peter Cook, he was fine too as Nigel. Didn't really seem like he was that important to the plot, though. Marc McClure, it was a lot of fun to see him outside of the Christopher Reeve Superman films. Maureen Teefy, I thought was terrific as Lucy Lane. I really did love her performance in this. She was spunky, she had a lot of charm, and she had some really genuine chemistry and really nice vibes with Helen Slater. And you also had some other actors and actresses, like you had Matt Frewer who played this lecherous, sleazy truck driver who tried to get into Supergirl's pants, and it was a very different kind of role for Matt Frewer, but he showed that he could pull that off, because I definitely didn't like that guy. And I almost didn't even recognize it was Matt Frewer at first, because he did such a good job playing such an asshole. But really, the main attractions here are Faye Dunaway and Helen Slater, and they both, in my opinion, delivered some really good performances for what they were given and for what they were asked to do. The film also, to me, featured some nice looking cinematography by Alan Hume. The editing by Malcolm Cook, I thought, was excellent for the most part. There were some moments where it might have been a little choppy, especially if you watch the theatrical version, but if you watch the extended cut, it definitely flows better. And the music by Jerry Goldsmith is just spectacular. This score is one of his best and one of his most underrated scores in his entire filmography. Like, this is one of those movies where even if you don't like it, I think pretty much everyone can admit that the score is definitely a highlight. I thought it was just a really rollicking, fun score, and it was Jerry Goldsmith's way to show what he might have done if he actually did get to do Superman the movie, because he was the initial choice to do the score, but there were some issues, and ultimately John Williams got the job. But Jerry Goldsmith really put his all and put everything into this score, and his score is a big reason why the film is honestly as good as it is, because of the fact that there's a lot of sequences in this film that are just elevated by this score. I mean, the opening credits just by themselves are a feat, because of the fact that the entire opening credits sequence was something that had never been done before at the time. The credits themselves were all made out of silver. I think it was like silver or steel or some kind of metal. They were handcrafted. This is one of the most expensive opening credits sequences ever at the time, and it definitely does look like it. And it's honestly a really cool opening credit sequence. It's very unique. And then you have the score by Jerry Goldsmith in the background, and it just makes it rise to a really legitimately high level. And that high level of production value is pretty much consistent throughout the film. There are some moments near the end where some of the effects are kind of chintzy, but for the most part, the effects in this were amazing. Derek Meddings and company deserve so much more praise, so much more appreciation from people for what they did with this film. I mentioned it before, but I'll mention it again. The flying sequences in this film are spectacular. They will make your jaw drop. They are honestly the most impressive flying sequences in any of the Salkind Superman films. And honestly, probably the most impressive flying sequences in any film from the 80s. The only film that comes close to being as good in terms of the flying sequences to me, to being as graceful, to being as smooth, is Hook. That's it. I mean, Superman, the movie, and Superman 2, and the other Christopher Reeve Superman films, they had some nice sequences. I mean, not Superman 4, but even those didn't reach the same levels of genuine awe that Supergirl does. And it's just one of those movies that it really is magical in a lot of different ways. It's a film that the more times that I sit down and watch it, the more I admire it, the more I enjoy it, the more I find that it's my cup of tea when it comes to entertainment. I will take Supergirl any day of the week over any of the Wonder Woman movies, over Captain Marvel, and honestly over a lot of modern comic book films. I guess it just speaks to my personal sensibilities more. And I think it's a film that, even if you ultimately were not a big fan of it, I think it's worth another watch. I think it's worth another chance, especially if you only saw the theatrical cut. I think that's the biggest reason why the film got so many bad reviews when it came out, because of the fact that they saw the theatrical version. Because even I have to admit, when I first saw the film, I saw it in VHS, and it was the theatrical cut, and I didn't like it. I thought it was confusing. I thought it didn't make any sense. I was really shaking my head. I was like, what is this? I like some of this stuff. I like some of the effects. I like Helen Slater. The score is really good, but it doesn't make any sense. And then I saw the international cut and the extended version, and then I was like, wow, okay, now this actually comes across as a cohesive film. This actually is something that I can follow. And yeah, it's not great, but I still think it's a really good film for what it is. And I'm not going to sit here and say otherwise. And it's one of those movies that I definitely will want to pick up on Blu-ray one of these days. But yeah, it's fun. It's a fun film, and I don't feel ashamed for liking it. And it's not a guilty pleasure at all for me either. If you enjoy films like Krull or Space Hunter or those kind of movies that were like mixes of different genres from the 80s, I think this is going to be right up your alley. Anyway, thanks for watching my review of Supergirl, and as always, I'll see you later. See ya.